Hello, my name is Kristian Lavercombe. I play Riff Raff in the Rocky Horror Show, and I've played Riff Raff probably 2,000 times now, which is a bit of a record. Rocky Horror has been a huge part of my life and continues to be so. And, I started with Rocky Horror like everybody else by watching the film. And me and my friends used to get together on a Friday night, put the videotape on, and we'd all sit around and watch Rocky Horror, and I thought it was amazing. I thought it was, it was so different and strange and unusual, and as a teenager, it's got everything you want in it. It's a bit subversive and it's crazy. So, when I got an opportunity to play Frankenfurter initially, and people find that hard to believe now, because I've done Riff Raff so many times, but I played Frank twice, and I played Brad, and then I'd never imagined playing Riff Raff, and I turned up to an audition in Auckland, New Zealand of all places, and Kristian Lavercombe, who directs Rocky Horror, is directing the show at the Grand. He saw me at the audition and was like, "Oh, we're going to get you to audition for Riff Raff," which I was like, "Oh my god, I never even imagined that." So I did it, and it came out, and I have a slightly unusual singing voice, so it seemed to fit quite well with Riff Raff. So I got the role. I was amazed that I got the role, and then Riff Raff is so high. It's a really high sing, and I thought I'd never be able to carry that off. So I honestly believed for the first 6 months I was doing it, I thought I'm going to get fired next week. I'm sure I'm going to get fired, but I'm still doing it 10 years later, and it's meant so much to me. I've managed to travel all over the world with it, and I've been to South Korea with it, and South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, multiple tours through the UK and Ireland and Italy, and later this year we're going to Tel Aviv with it, and it just keeps on going and going. But do you know what? Aside from that, the main thing that keeps me stimulated, because people often go, "Aren't you bored by doing a show? Aren't you? Isn't it Groundhog Day?" There is an element of Groundhog Day, but the one thing that's different from any other show out there is the fact that the audience is insane. The audience is fabulous and insane, and they are like, I've said this many times, but they are like the character. They're another character in the show, and a character that you never know exactly what they're going to say. So, they're fabulously dressed often. They're dressed as us, or sometimes even better than us, and they come along and they know every word, and they know they've got their own jokes, their own laugh lines, and they make it really cool and different. I don't know any other show like it that has that kind of intense following, and how the fans are so involved. I feel like Rocky Horror, well, they say often Rocky Horror was the start of punk. I know there was all that Vivienne Westwood thing going on, but you look back in it, Frankenfurter with his leather jacket and his safety pins and his badges all over. It was definitely an element of punk, which is Rocky Horror is responsible for. And the fishnets and all that kind of thing. But also, I feel like Rocky Horror is the first immersive show. It's where the audience are in there, they're dressed up as the characters, and they are part of Rocky Horror. I feel like they're also the first cosplayers. They're the first for everything. So that's why people wonder why Rocky Horror is still going nearly 50 years on. And I think it's because it's a definite piece of pop culture. It's kept on being relevant for the last 50 years. And who knows, maybe it'll keep on going for another 50. Who knows? My first entrance is in the castle window, and ironically, as an actor, it's also one of my biggest notes, because it's I have to go out there and sing a high B, which is daunting on your first note. So especially when I go to Wales, because I think, there'll be a few singers in the audience there, and so Riff Raff is really the sidekick to Frankenfurter, and when Richard O'Brien was writing Rocky Horror, he was obsessed with all those B-horror films and all those sci-fis, that used to go and see in the cinema. And, they were all often quite camp and quite full-on and really high stakes and really dramatic. And he's taken the best bits of all those different old movies that he's seen. He's rolled them into one ball of craziness. And so that's what Rocky Horror is to me. It's yeah, it's all the best bits of all those great sci-fis, all those Hammer horrors, and all the things that inspired him. And if you know, I've done the show with Richard O'Brien quite a few times, where he comes in and plays the narrator, and when you meet him, you go, it all makes sense. You go, oh, of course you've written Rocky Horror. You know, he epitomizes everything that Rocky Horror stands for people. Because it does seem to mean a lot to some people, which is, you know, it's great. I think it has a message in there of be whoever you want to be and don't care what anybody else thinks. Again, Rocky Horror was completely ahead of its time. You know, it was saying this 45 years ago, when, you know, and now the world's caught up that it's okay to be whoever you want to be. And as long as you're not hurting anybody, it's fine. So, yeah, that's Rocky Horror. For most of the actors, the ad-libbing, you know, you have to stick to the script. But there is one or two characters in there, which is he is played by the amazing Philip Franks, who is, I think Philip Franks is a genius of a performer. He changes it up every single night, and you know, he's got lots to work with because the audience do call out to him specifically quite a lot of the time, and he's always got a comeback. I've never met an actor who, you know, he'll be in warm up, you know, writing new jokes. And you know, Philip Franks is a dramatic actor. He's not known as a comedian, but he's so funny. He's incredibly funny and very topical, and incredibly intelligent in his humor, and sometimes he says things which you do not expect to come out of his mouth. So yeah, I think the audiences love him, rightfully so. Do you know what? People often ask what your funniest thing is with Rocky Horror, but it's actually, well, you know, every night there are funny things that happen in Rocky Horror. But I don't know if it's so much funny, but it was certainly memorable. And that in my first entrance, when I'm in a big castle window, and I open the castle window and I start singing, and I'm standing there waiting behind the castle window, and I'm behind there for like, I don't know, about 5 seconds, not very long, before I open it. And I stood there, and it was just 5 seconds to go, and all of a sudden I got a nosebleed, and there was no reason for it. My nose just started bleeding, but it wasn't just a little bit, it was just profusely bleeding. And then I just had to open up the castle window, and they must have thought I was covered in blood. Like, my costume has blood on it anyway, so they must have gone, oh, is this part of the show? It's like, this is a really edgy production of Rocky Horror. It's like they've really gone for the horror of it, haven't they? So yeah, and I have to sing some huge notes, and what you find is you cannot stop. You know, normally if you had a nosebleed, you'd sniff, you know, and try and stop it from bleeding so much, but you can't do that when you're singing. So yeah, it was grotesque. It's not a very funny story, but it's certainly very memorable. And yeah, I continued bleeding all through the time warp, and no one ever commented on it. The audience never commented on it, so they must have thought, yeah, this is meant to be. And all the other characters on stage are looking at me like, what are you doing? Is this a show stop? But no, carried on going. Dr. Theatre. But you know, you'll have stuff that happens on stage generally. Like, I've seen Dr. Scott comes on in a wheelchair, and one time he came on and his wheelchair jammed, but he was jammed in a completely wrong place on stage. He was off the side, but he was meant to be in the middle, and all the cast are meant to be around him, so the cast had to rush to the other side of the stage, pretend that was the middle. And then as he tried to fix it, he was trying to fix the thing, and the wheelchair broke, so like he broke off the arm, and he broke off the other arm, and then he broke off the back of the chair. He basically dismantled the wheelchair trying to fix it, and then there was nothing left. And yeah, I mean, you know, when you're working with those props, things often go a little bit wrong, don't they? I remember another one with Dr. Scott where he didn't, he forgot to put his mic on. Not this Dr. Scott, it was Dr. Scott in the past. He forgot to put his mic on, and so you have a handheld, but when you're trying to operate a wheelchair with one hand and sing into the mic, you just go around in circles. So yeah, do you know, often with the theatre shows, the cast find things really funny, but the audience in general never find out about it. So yeah, with this particular tour and this cast of the tour, we were cast a long time ago, and the show has been on the road now for about 11 months. So we were one of the first shows to get up and running at the end of the COVID lockdowns, and it was very early on. Like, I don't think there were any other productions that were going at the time, and we've somehow managed to defy all the rules and keep going. I think we've missed 1 or 2 weeks in the last 10 months, but the show's been going strong, which is brilliant, and audiences have really supported us. And we had a few delays getting started before our first rehearsal. Like, we were meant to start in January, and then we were meant to start in February, and then March, and then I think we started in May. And so it did keep on changing, but we've been so unbelievably lucky going through all the, and the theatres have been so amazing with us all, with following the COVID regulations when they were in full force, and us sort of testing every day, and we had COVID officers on board. It was a very unusual time, and audiences who were quite well prepared to completely mask up and come along and see us, and even test before they came along. It's a huge rigmarole, but everybody's just played a part in making sure that Rocky Horror just kept on going. And some shows weren't so lucky, and they have fallen on the wayside part through there because I guess Rocky Horror's lucky because it's got an established base of fans. So it wasn't trying to do something new that people weren't familiar with. So we're very lucky. Yeah. Those initial audiences with Rocky Horror and COVID, where you'd be looking out there and there'd be like 1,000 people staring back at you with masks on. But the great thing about the Rocky Horror fans were they'd have Rocky Horror themed masks. So there'd be all these lips, or all these Rocky Horror lips, which were great. But it's very weird as an actor to sort of look out there and go, don't know if they're smiling, I don't know if they can hear them, but they are a bit muffled. And because everybody calls out in Rocky Horror, then people were like, do people still call out? And they're like, they do, they're just a bit more muffled. It's like, but I've heard it before, so I knew what they were saying. But when they're on mass, it's great. I was just like, you just have to speak a bit louder. And but I'm sure we'll look back at these times going, they were very unusual, but we got through them. When we first started getting audiences back after COVID, it was very obvious that audiences were way more appreciative for just even being in a theatre and seeing a show, and the fact that we were all trying to get it up and running and going, and there was a definite atmosphere in those theatres where they were really glad to be there, and they felt like they'd actually been given a bit of freedom, which actually is exactly what it was. It was a bit of freedom to actually go out and enjoy themselves. One of the things that I think has been most difficult for the fans of Rocky over this past year is, and probably for most musical theatre shows, is stage doors. Stage doors haven't really been happening all year. They've just started up very recently, and that's been a huge part of the avid fans who come to the stage door. And after Rocky Horror, normally in the past, when you come out of stage door, there's a buzz. There's lots of people. Everyone's dressed up, and they're all got there with their, they're all having photos and videos, and getting you to sign stuff, and and you get to know, because the Rocky Horror fans keep on coming back and back for more. You get to know them really well. Like when I start a tour, I often know the people at stage door better than I know the cast at the beginning of a run, because I've known them for years. So I think the fans have really missed that this year, and they've started coming back to the stage doors very recently, and not all places, but most of the places. It does depend on the theatre, but you can tell they're so relieved. But some of my other cast members still aren't familiar with the regular fans, and some of those have been fans way before I was ever involved in the show. They've been there for 10, 20, 30 years. They've been coming along, and now they bring their kids and their grandkids, and they're all dressed up in their Rocky Horror outfits, which is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Something which anyone who sort of follows me on social media or in the show will realize that I love the transformation of being an actor. I love turning myself into a different person. I love looking in the mirror and seeing, a different character staring back at me. And, I've said this many times before, but, I've probably stared in the mirror more as Riff Raff than I have as myself. So I do wonder if my brain, even recognizes that I'm me and not Riff Raff. I have no idea. But, initially, when I first started doing Rocky Horror, I'd like to think I look completely different from Riff Raff, because when I'd go out of stage door, then people would have no idea I was in the show. So they wouldn't recognize me. They just watched me for the last 2 hours, but have no idea I was actually in the show. So they go, can we have a photo? But instead of having me in the photo, they give me the camera to take a photo of him. So, they'd have no idea, and I just take the photo, go, thank you, bye. So, that doesn't happen so much anymore, because, those Rocky Horror fans keep on coming back, so they recognize me now. Makeup-wise, when I come into work in the day, I apply the makeup. It used to take me a lot longer, but I have got it down to a fine art now, because I've done it thousands of times. So, it normally takes me about, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, which I think is good, because, I know some people who take a lot longer to get ready to go out. So, it takes me about, but, I did do a stopwatch the other day, and I tried to do a speed run, and I got ready in about 12 and a half minutes, and it still looked pretty good.